Hello, my name is Veronica Bullock, and this afternoon we're going to show you how to do winter seed sowing. So our goal is to create a mini greenhouse out of a milk type jug. So it could be in a half-gallon jug or a gallon jug. The main thing is you want to make sure you use a clear container. We don't want to use a white container or an opaque container because sunlight won't be able to get through it. It won't work well for starting our seeds. So the first step to create your mini greenhouse for your winter sowing is to drill holes in the bottom. The reason we want to drill holes in the bottom is because we want to make sure that the roots from the plant can drain. Now there are a couple of different things that you could use to prepare. You could use scissors or you could use a nail and punch holes through. I prefer to use a drill because I think it's the easiest. Before you get started, you also want to make sure you have your seeds available. Today we're going to be starting tomato seeds. You're going to need a marker to label what your plants are, a Sharpie to write on the outside of the jug, and some duct tape to tape the jug closed when we're finished. Now it's not necessary, but I also like to have a little container like this. That way when we're pouring water into our soil to wet it, it doesn't create a mess if you're inside. And then also having some newspaper nearby to help as well, to put on the bottom of your jug. That's gonna help your roots when it's time to transplant. So our first step is to drill the holes. Now you want to drill 5 to 6 drainage holes. I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit for this. You want to be careful to hold the jug steady while you're drilling. So we've drilled 6 holes here, and that's when you have these jugs outside, when it rains, all the excess water can drain out of the bottom. So once you have your holes drilled in your jug, the next step is to cut your jug to create your mini greenhouse. Now, I like to use jugs that have a handle on the back. That way you can create a little bit of a hinge and hold on to it. So I find it easiest to use a razor blade or a box cutter like this. Again, you want to make sure you're cautious of your fingers when you're cutting, and start in the back. We're going to leave about a 2-inch hinge, so try to cut as evenly as you can around the jug, leaving about 4 inches at the bottom, and that's where our soil will be. Now, winter seed sowing is not an exact science, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But try to cut as evenly as you can around the edge. I like to rotate the jug around just to help me hold it. And then once you get to the back, you can open it up. And you want to have about a 2 to 3 inch hinge. So I might cut this just a little bit more. Okay. So we have our holes drilled, we have our hinge cut and our jug open. The next step is to take some newspaper. I just have a 1/4 of a sheet of newspaper, and to line the bottom of the jug. Now the reason you do this is that way when you transplant, your roots aren't going to grow out the bottom through your drain holes. It also helps when these are sitting outside to keep any insects or things from crawling in. So I'm just trying to push it down as much as I can here. And now we're ready to add our soil. So I just use a Miracle-Gro potting soil mix. And this is where I like to use a container to help keep things from getting messy if you're inside. And we're going to add about 3 to 4 inches of soil into our jug. Now this soil is pretty dry, so we're gonna have to make sure that we wet it well before we actually plant our seeds. So try to get all of the newspaper covered and down on the bottom. Now, once I get a few inches in there like this, I like to take my hands and try to push all of the air bubbles out of the soil. You want to make sure you have it compact down nice and tight. So press it down some, and then I'm going to add some more potting soil. And now we're going to wet the soil some and press down those air bubbles to push it out some more. This is another reason why it's nice to have the jug underneath. That way you don't make a mess if you're inside with the water. So I'm pouring quite a bit of water in here because I said this potting soil is pretty dry. And we want to make sure this is nice and moist before we seal it up. So it's also nice to have some paper towels close by so you can use those to wipe your hands off. And after pressing down, we're going to add just a little bit more soil. This is probably one of the most important parts, because if your soil is not moist, then your seeds may not sprout and germinate well. Okay, so we have enough soil now. One last time to press out the air bubbles. And we'll add just a little bit more water. Okay, so now we have our soil firmly packed in the bottom of our jug. You want to have at least 2 to 3 inches. That way when your plants start sprouting and grow their roots, they have enough soil for you to transplant with. So the next thing that we need to do is look at the seed instructions on the back of our tomato seeds. So here we have red cherry tomatoes. And if you look at the back of the placket, it says the planting depth is 1/4 inch, and we want to start indoors about 5 to 7 weeks before the last frost. Now, when you're using the winter sowing method, it's a little bit different from starting seeds indoors, but we're going to go ahead and set this jug out today. Even though it's cold and snowy, that's okay. But in about 5 to 7 weeks, it should be ready to transplant. So it's important to know and write the date when you're planting. Now, 1/4 inch is about the depth of my pinky finger. So for a gallon jug, I usually poke about 5 holes, kind of in a dice pattern. And 1/4 inch isn't very deep, so you want to make sure that you keep them at that depth. Pour some seeds into your hand, and then I usually put a couple seeds in each hole, just in case one of them doesn't germinate. So in this jug, I'm putting about 10 seeds total, 2 in each hole. And then we're just gonna lightly cover those back up. Like I said, 1/4 inch deep isn't very deep, so you wanna make sure that you don't go too deep on your planting depth. Okay, so now that we have our seeds in there, the next step is to make sure that you put your label, which I've already prepared, in the jug. So this is labeled with the type of tomatoes, red cherry, and the date, 3/17/26 today. So we're gonna stick that down inside of our jug on the edge. And now we're ready to seal our jug up. So for this, we're going to use the duct tape. Usually I break off a couple sections. Again, winter seed sowing isn't an exact science, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm gonna rip off a piece of duct tape here to get started. Close the hinge on our jug, and then try to line this up so we can tape it closed. So I have a ring of duct tape all the way around where we cut our jug open, and that's just to keep it sealed and shut while it's outside for the next 5 to 7 weeks. The last thing you want to do is make sure that you label the outside of your jug as well. So we have our red cherry tomato, and today's date, which is 3/17/26. And now you want to find a nice place outside that you can put this where it'll be safe from any wind where you may get knocked over or any pets that may damage it. For this one, I'll set it out by our beds by our community garden. And next thing we do is just wait for the next 5 to 7 weeks, and then we'll be ready to open these jugs up and get ready to transplant.